Hi, it's Carlos from RC Advisor. A lot of people consider epoxy the ultimate adhesive because first of all, it'll glue almost anything to anything, but also it doesn't need a solvent. A glue like this uses a solvent, which is water, so you have to wait for the water to evaporate. And most glues use a different solvent, you know, alcohol based or something else. And the problem is that the solvent eats away at foam and some other materials, so you can't use them. Since epoxy dries through a chemical process, it doesn't need air, it doesn't need a solvent, and it's not going to shrink, it's not going to change shape when it's drying, and it's really strong. Now, before you use it, think carefully about whether you even need epoxy, because it's so strong. I mean, I used epoxy to join these two pieces of foam, but it really wasn't a good idea because the foam is a lot weaker than the epoxy. So the joint, you know, it's going to fail not at the joint but at the foam. But epoxy is relatively heavy. It's also a bit of a pain to work with because it comes as two parts that you have to mix together. And the way I like to do that is that I use these disposable cups and I use the disposable brushes. And it's better to do it by weight rather than by volume. So I have a pretty accurate gram scale that I use for that. So I'm going to put the cup on top of there, measure both parts. The minute I measure them, I have a timer to keep track of the time. And then when you mix them, you have to mix it a lot more than you think you might need to because it's kind of like a thick syrup. So I would say mix it for at least a minute. And you want to be scraping the bottom and the sides and just be very thorough. So once you have it mixed, a lot of folks like to use the 5-minute epoxy. I don't like to use it because there's hardly any time to work with it. You know, if you have 5 minutes and you're going to use a minute to mix it, you have what, maybe 3 minutes to actually put it on the part. You know, so you have to do a very small batch and you have to be very quick about it. You know, there's not much room for error. So I don't like using it, but also the big downside of the 5-minute epoxy is that it's just not as strong. You know, there's a lot of additives on there that they put in just to get it to cure so quickly. I like to use the 15-minute epoxy. I think it's a good compromise. I get a lot more time to work with it. If I want to add some stuff to the epoxy so that it doesn't flow, for example, this is cut up pieces of fiberglass. I have time to do it, but at the same time, it's going to harden in 45 minutes. It's going to fully cure in 3 hours, and actually that's pretty comparable to the glue that I like to use because this is going to be dry after at most like an hour, and then I can go on to the next step. So, you know, be safe. I also use gloves when I'm dealing with epoxy. It's not good to touch the hardener. You can develop an allergy. Use alcohol to clean up. And till next time.